Morning everyone, this is Nicole Ali. I was watching a video from Sister Ajali, the Radical Sister, or the Radical Home Goddess, and she mentioned how housing projects had been modeled using rodents before, and I thought it was interesting, so I wanted to look that up. It is a form of, excuse me, it is a form of studying eugenics, and Q Butter had a live stream with her last night. I was on my way home driving, but I was in the chat room, and he discussed documents from, I believe, was it 1916, 5 years prior to the bombing of Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street that was there, where they said what they would do as far as environment infrastructure. And so this Dr. Calhoun, who was an animal behavior scientist, studied this in the 1970s. The article is How Mice Turn Their Private Paradise into a Terrifying Dystopia. It was published in 2015, but I think it's still relevant today. So here you have the structure itself with Mr. Calhoun or Dr. Calhoun, I'm not sure. In the middle, the common area where the mice meet, congregate, communicate with one another. Just as you would see in the downstairs courtyard area of a housing project today. You might have benches, you might have a few trees here and there, but that's where people normally congregate. And since it's in an area that's surrounded by buildings, for instance, there's an echo, especially at nighttime. You might have some street lamps here and there. So there's an echo. You can't talk but so loud because everyone can hear you. He also had apartments at different levels in this structure he built. He was going to study the behavioral, generational, nutritional, and possibly psychological effects of living in close quarters like this from a rodent's perspective. Excuse me. So in 1972, animal behaviorist John Calhoun built a mouse paradise with beautiful buildings and limitless food. He introduced 8 mice to the population. 2 years later, the mice had created their own apocalypse, and here's why. This is called Universe 25. So this is the 25th iteration of this box, this giant box he used to model housing projects. It was the 25th one he'd done. It was designed to be a rodent utopia. The trouble was, this utopia did not have a benevolent creator. John B. Calhoun had designed quite a few mouse experiments before he got to the 25th one, and didn't expect to be watching a happy story. Divided into main squares and then subdivided into levels, with ramps going up to apartments. The place looked great and always kept stocked with food, but its inhabitants were doomed from the get-go. Universe 25 started out with 8 mice, 4 males, 4 females. By day 560, the mouse population reached 2,200. I can't even imagine being around 2,200 mice. Oh, Lord. Oof. And then steadily declined back down to unrecoverable extinction. At the peak population, most mice spent every living second in the company of hundreds of other mice, which right there is disgusting. They gathered in the main squares, and that is that middle part, the area where they were congregating, like a courtyard area. So they gathered in the main squares, waiting to be fed, and occasionally attacking each other. Few females carried pregnancies to term, and the ones that did seemed to simply forget about their babies. They'd move half their litter away from danger and forget the rest because they would be so preoccupied with what other mice were doing. You remember, it's like hundreds of them climbing on top of each other. She probably forgot where she laid the baby, or the baby got trampled by other mice, or eaten by other mice, or carried away by other mice. So, by adults. So, or kicked to the side. So the half the litter would survive possibly, but the other half would be gone. And mice can have, depending on the species, I believe up to like a dozen in a litter at a time. And a female mouse may have maybe 8 to 10 litters in her lifetime. So you can do the math on how many babies she can have. If they have 10 in a litter and she's only saving about 5 of them, the population potential, you can say it could be cut in half because they're not able to save all of their babies. So it says sometimes they drop and abandon a baby while they were carrying it. And this is a mouse, I think, he's in a restraint device. So he can't move, he can't get out. They're probably holding his tail at the back to give an injection or something. The few secluded spaces housed a population Calhoun called the beautiful ones. Generally guarded by one male, the females and a few males inside the space didn't breed or fight or do anything but eat and groom and sleep. When the population started declining, the beautiful ones were spared from violence and death, but had completely lost touch with social behaviors, including having sex or caring for their young. So the quote-unquote beautiful ones are considered the elites. And as we know, in certain societies, even in the past, those of the aristocracy had less children, were not socially compatible with others on a lower class. And so that's what he was using them for. And if you notice, they didn't use, if this is the type of mouse they used, they didn't use white mice. They used mice that were brown or gray or black. So that's important to know. I have to look at the original study, if I can find it, to see why that may have been, why they didn't use white mice. I'm just wondering. It goes on to say, in 1972, with the baby boomers coming of age in an ever more crowded world and reports of riots in the cities, Universe 25 looked like a Malthusian nightmare. It even acquired its own catchy name, the behavioral sink. If starvation didn't kill everyone, people would destroy themselves. The best option was to flee to the country or the suburbs, where people had space and life was peaceful and natural. Today, the experiment remains frightening, but the nature of the fear has changed. A recent study pointed out that Universe 25 was not, if looked at as a whole, too overcrowded. Pens or apartments at the very end of each hallway had only one entrance and exit, making them easy to guard. Sounds very familiar to a housing project where black people live. This allowed more aggressive territorial males to limit the number of mice in that pen. So the males at the end of the hall would let certain mice up and down the steps in the little stairwells and block other mice. It caused overcrowding the rest of the world while isolating the few beautiful ones who lived there from normal society. So they were separated. Probably lived in a penthouse near the top where the water bottles were. Instead of a population problem, one could argue that Universe 25 had a fair distribution problem. The fact remains that it had a problem, and one that eventually led to its destruction. If this behavior is shared by both mice and humans, can we escape Universe 25's fate? And they have, I think, some comments here. So I'll leave you to read those on your own. But yeah, the difference is mice don't have an economy. And the way you can stop a lot of this from happening in humans is to simply improve their economic situation. then you wouldn't have to have people living in a project for housing, which is literally what it is. This man conducted a science project. I want to reiterate that in your head. A science project for mice that they use to house humans in. Similarly, in real life, it's just bigger. We had Cabrini Green, I think in Chicago. You have housing projects out here, Jordan Downs, housing projects in Watts and Compton, for instance, Inglewood, where black people, I don't really care about the other groups, but black people specifically were overcrowded and housed. And you see the effects of the behavior there. One thing he didn't do in this study was remove the males from the situation. If he had, I wonder what would happen. Allow the males to get the females pregnant and then remove the males or kill the males. And see what happens to the females and the sons that they raise. That would have been very interesting. But I'll leave you. I have the links. I'll come back with another video. I just thought it was interesting to go through this. I'll try to find the original research article. It is from the 70s, so it may be difficult to find. But yeah, shout out to the Radical Sister again, Sister Aja. Those of you who are subscribed to my channel, thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate your comments. I'm doing my best to get the trolls out of the comment section. I had to get a few out yesterday before I just completely removed them. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. If you can support my channel, please do. And I'll talk to you all in the next one. Have a great day.